Nia Okafor grew up in Lagos feeling invisible in her own home. From an early age, it was clear her parents had a favorite, her younger brother, Chike. He was praised, encouraged, and promised every opportunity imaginable, while Nia was constantly told she was weak or useless. Even small achievements of hers were dismissed, and any mistake felt like proof that she didn't belong. Her parents' neglect wasn't subtle. It was a daily reminder that she wasn't enough, and her siblings mirrored that attitude, leaving her isolated in a household that should have felt safe. By her teens, Nia learned that if she wanted anything, she would have to do it herself. She cooked her meals, managed her schoolwork, and navigated life without the guidance or support she craved. The pain of being overlooked and abandoned was deep, but it also sparked something inside her, a quiet, burning determination to prove her worth. She began dreaming not just of success, but of freedom, a life where she wouldn't have to rely on anyone who had already dismissed her. Every insult, every favoritism-laden decision by her family became fuel for her ambition. She carried the loneliness and hurt with her, but she also carried a vision, a future where she could succeed on her own terms, far from the shadow of a family that had made her feel invisible. Nia's early years were full of betrayal and pain, but they planted the seeds of resilience that would later define her journey. By the time Nia turned 15, life had already taught her that nothing would be handed to her. While her brother Chike lived a life of comfort, with private tutors, brand new gadgets, and all the opportunities she was denied, Nia was hustling just to keep up. She juggled multiple part-time jobs, tutoring younger students in math and English, delivering packages through the bustling streets of Lagos, and taking on small coding projects whenever she could find them. Every day was a balancing act, moving between work, school, and the few moments she could carve out for herself. Evenings were her most sacred time. While others her age might have been out with friends or relaxing, Nia was hunched over her small desk, eyes fixed on her laptop or scribbling notes about programming languages and basic finance principles. She watched tutorials, read online articles, and experimented with writing simple software. Every rejection from clients or coding competitions stung, but instead of giving up, she turned those moments into lessons. Each insult from her family or each door that closed only strengthened her resolve to succeed on her own terms. It wasn't easy. There were nights when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, when the weight of loneliness pressed down like a heavy blanket. Yet, the more she struggled, the clearer her vision became. Nia didn't just want a good job or a stable life. She dreamed bigger. She imagined building something of her own, a tech company that could change lives, create opportunities, and prove that her worth was not defined by the neglect and favoritism she had endured. She pictured a business that could one day eclipse her family's influence, a silent triumph over years of being dismissed. Her world was small, but her ambition was vast. Every small project she completed, every extra hour she spent learning something new, became a stepping stone toward that dream. Friends noticed her determination, and though she kept most of her struggles to herself, the fire inside her was impossible to hide. Nia was transforming her pain into power, her setbacks into strategy. By the time she left for Accra 3 years later, Nia was no longer just a girl struggling to survive. She was a young woman with a plan, armed with knowledge, resilience, and a vision that extended far beyond the streets of Lagos. Her early struggles had not broken her. They had built her into someone disciplined, resourceful, and ambitious, ready to take on the world and create her own path, no matter who doubted her. When Nia turned 18, she made a choice that would change her life forever. She packed a single duffel bag, grabbed her laptop, and quietly left Lagos behind. She didn't say goodbye to her family. There was nothing left there for her. The house that had been filled with favoritism and dismissal, the rooms where she had been ignored or criticized, became memories she was ready to leave behind. Moving to Accra, Ghana, felt like stepping into the unknown, but it was a risk she had to take to chase the life she dreamed of. Her first few weeks in Accra were tough. She rented a small, plain studio apartment that barely fit her essentials, but it was hers. There were no comforts, no safety net, no familiar faces. Freelance coding jobs kept her busy during the day. Small projects for local businesses, online clients, anything that could pay the rent and buy her groceries. She spent evenings and weekends attending workshops, learning about technology, finance, and entrepreneurship. Every skill she picked up felt like a brick in the foundation of the life she was building for herself. The loneliness was sharp. There were nights when she sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she had made a mistake. But that emptiness also became fuel. With no one around to tell her she wasn't good enough, Nia learned to trust herself, to rely on her own judgment, and to push harder when things got difficult. She celebrated small wins, finishing a project ahead of schedule, mastering a new coding language, getting positive feedback from a client. Each victory reminded her that she was capable, that leaving home had been the right decision. Nia also discovered a sense of freedom she had never known. No one was there to dismiss her ideas or compare her to Chaik. She could think big, take risks, and follow her curiosity wherever it led. She experimented with new coding techniques, brainstormed ideas for software platforms, and even started sketching plans for a tech business that could serve small businesses across Africa. Her vision was growing bigger than the cramped studio apartment she called home. By the end of her first year, Nia had not only adapted to life in Accra, she had begun to thrive. She had built a small network of like-minded people, found mentors who encouraged her, and felt her confidence grow with each challenge she overcame. Leaving home had been scary, but it had been necessary. The pain of loneliness and the weight of independence shaped her into someone tougher, smarter, and more determined than she had ever been. She realized that this city, far from the life that had held her back, was where she could finally build the future she deserved. Nia's courage to step away from everything familiar marked the first true chapter of her independence. Every coding job completed, every workshop attended, every sleepless night studying became part of a journey that was hers alone, a journey fueled by grit, resilience, and a refusal to be defined by the family that had abandoned her. After years of late nights, endless coding, and constant learning, Nia finally reached a turning point. She had been experimenting with different ideas, trying to find a way to create something meaningful and useful. That's when Orumtech was born, a software platform designed specifically for small and medium-sized businesses across Africa. The platform helped business owners manage finances, track sales, and grow efficiently, all in one easy-to-use system. It was practical, smart, and exactly the kind of solution that had been missing in the market. Nia put everything she had into Orumtech. She spent long hours testing features, fixing bugs, and thinking of ways to make the platform better. She knew the journey ahead would be tough, but she also knew she was ready. Her work caught the attention of Kwame Adu, an experienced angel investor who had a reputation for spotting talent early. He was impressed not just by the software, but by Nia herself, her focus, her vision, and the clarity with which she explained her plan. Kwame offered seed funding, enough to take Orumtech from a small project to a fully functional business. It was the first real validation of her efforts, and it felt like the door she had been knocking on for years had finally opened. With the funding in place, Nia started building a team. She carefully chose people who shared her vision and work ethic, often mentoring them herself. The office was small, the hours were long, and every day brought new challenges, from technical problems to marketing hurdles. But Nia thrived in the chaos. She loved solving problems, seeing her ideas come to life, and watching her small platform slowly grow into something bigger. Every client that signed up, every positive review she received, reinforced her belief that leaving home and chasing her dream had been the right choice. Orumtech's growth was steady but impressive. Within months, small business owners across Lagos, Accra, and beyond began using the platform. Nia's name started circulating in entrepreneurial circles as someone to watch, a self-taught coder who had built a tech solution from scratch in a market full of challenges. The platform became more than a tool. It became a symbol of independence, creativity, and determination. People admired how she had taken her struggles and turned them into a business that empowered others. Even as Orumtech grew, Nia never lost the personal touch. She spent late nights brainstorming improvements, responding personally to user feedback, and coaching her team on how to handle setbacks. Every challenge she faced reminded her of the years she had spent fighting to prove herself. Slowly, the business empire she had once only dreamed about was beginning to take shape, brick by brick. Orumtech wasn't just a startup. It was proof that Nia's resilience, skill, and relentless ambition could turn dreams into reality. It was her first big break, and it set the stage for everything she would achieve in the years to come. Over the next 10 years, Nia's hard work and vision transformed Orumtech from a small startup into a powerhouse in the African tech market. The platform she had built for small and medium-sized businesses became essential for entrepreneurs across the continent. With every update, every new feature, Orumtech grew stronger, and Nia's reputation as a visionary leader spread beyond Africa. By the time she turned 30, she had expanded the company internationally, signing partnerships with firms in Europe, Asia, and the United States. Orumtech was no longer just a tool for small businesses. It was a global brand, and Nia Okafor had become a billionaire CEO. Despite her wealth, Nia remained grounded. She remembered the long nights in Lagos and Accra, the meals she had skipped, the lonely apartments, and the endless effort she had poured into learning and building something from nothing. She thought about her parents and Chaik, who had dismissed her for so long, and she couldn't help but feel a quiet satisfaction. She had achieved everything they had told her was impossible, and she did it on her own terms. At first, she kept much of her success private. There was no need to show off. Her achievements were proof enough. The silent pride of knowing she had risen from neglect and abandonment to global success was far sweeter than applause or attention. Nia's days were filled with board meetings, strategy sessions, and mentoring her team. She remained actively involved in product development, often working late into the night, ensuring Aurum Tech stayed ahead of the competition. She also invested in research and innovation, always looking for ways to expand and improve the company. Her discipline, focus, and resourcefulness, traits honed through years of struggle, were key to her success. Every decision she made reflected the resilience she had built from her past, turning obstacles into opportunities and challenges into stepping stones. Even as Aurum Tech grew, Nia never lost her empathy. She remembered how hard it had been for small business owners like her early clients and made sure the platform remained accessible and useful. She quietly funded programs to train young programmers and entrepreneurs, believing that success was most meaningful when it could create opportunities for others. By 30, Nia had more than wealth. She had influence, respect, and a legacy in the making. She had proven that talent, determination, and vision could overcome neglect and doubt. Becoming a billionaire was not just about money. It was about reclaiming her power, writing her own story, and showing the world that she was capable of achieving greatness entirely on her own. Every triumph, every expansion, and every milestone was a reminder that the girl who had once been dismissed as useless had become a force to be reckoned with, a living testament to resilience, independence, and dreams realized. Just when Nia had settled into her success and was quietly enjoying the fruits of her labor, her past came knocking. Out of nowhere, her parents and Chaik resurfaced, suddenly acting like they cared about her life. They appeared at events, sent messages, and made surprise visits, all with the same smug confidence they had carried when dismissing her as a child. But Nia knew their timing too well. This wasn't about reconnecting. It was about access. They wanted shares in Aurum Tech, special treatment, and even loans for their failed ventures, as if the years of neglect and abandonment never happened. The hypocrisy was impossible to ignore. These were the same people who had watched her struggle, ignored her dreams, and left her to fend for herself. They had never shown interest when she was struggling through late nights and endless setbacks, yet now they expected a place at her table. Chaik, who had lived a life of privilege without lifting a finger, acted entitled, confident that Nia would somehow take care of him. The audacity was infuriating, but Nia remained calm. She had built everything from scratch, and she wasn't about to let anyone manipulate her with guilt, nostalgia, or family ties. Nia's response was measured but firm. She refused to hand over shares or give special favors. She listened patiently while they made demands, but she could see through every word, every plea disguised as concern. It was clear they were interested in her world only because it had something they wanted: money, status, and influence. For the first time in her life, Nia felt no obligation to cater to their expectations or soften her boundaries. The girl who had once been dismissed as useless now had the power to say no, and she wasn't afraid to use it. She also noticed how their behavior changed when they realized she wouldn't be manipulated. They tried flattery, guilt trips, and even hints of reconciliation, but Nia saw the pattern. This wasn't about rebuilding a relationship. It was about taking advantage. Each encounter strengthened her resolve to protect not just her wealth, but her peace and independence. She understood that success was not only measured in money but in control over her life, and she refused to let anyone steal that control. While the tension was painful at times, it also felt strangely satisfying. Nia had spent years being undervalued and ignored, and now she held all the cards. Her family's anger and entitlement were loud, but she remained composed, confident in her decisions. She didn't need their approval, nor would she allow their hypocrisy to influence her choices. In that moment, Nia realized something powerful. Success wasn't just about wealth. It was about claiming the respect, autonomy, and dignity that had been denied to her for so long. And for the first time, she was fully in charge of her own story. Nia could have let anger or bitterness control her after dealing with her family's demands, but she chose a different path. Instead of giving her parents or Chaik anything, she decided to use her wealth to make a real difference. Quietly, she began investing in small entrepreneurs and startups across West Africa. She focused on women and young people, those who, like her once, had been overlooked or underestimated. She wanted to create opportunities where none existed, giving others the tools to succeed in ways her own family never had the vision to. Her investments were discreet. Nia made sure her family never knew the full extent of what she was doing. She funded businesses in technology, agriculture, education, and creative industries, often mentoring the entrepreneurs herself. She offered guidance on business planning, product development, and financial management. To her, Helping someone else build their dream was more satisfying than giving in to her family's entitled demand. Each success story reminded her of her own journey, the long nights, the mistakes, and the resilience it took to grow Oromtech from scratch. The irony was striking. While her parents and Chike obsessed over her wealth, imagining that every dollar was meant for them, Nia was quietly transforming entire community. Women opened businesses that supported their families, young people gained skills and confidence, and small businesses thrived in ways that had once seemed impossible. Her family remained completely unaware, still focused on what they thought she owed them, blind to the ripple effects of her generosity. Nia felt a deep satisfaction in this secrecy. She didn't need recognition from her family to know the impact of her actions. Each investment, each mentorship, and each business that succeeded became a personal victory, proof that she could turn her pain into purpose. Unlike the fleeting approval her family had once sought, this was meaningful, lasting, and empowering. She was creating a legacy that extended far beyond her own wealth or family drama. This period also sharpened Nia's sense of strategy and vision. She learned to identify potential in people and ideas quickly, to provide the right support at the right time, and to trust her instinct. She saw patterns in what made startups succeed or fail, and used that knowledge to guide her investment. Every business she helped grow was a building block in a larger network of empowerment, a silent revolution powered by her own experience of being underestimated. Through it all, Nia remained grounded and focused. She was no longer just the girl who had been abandoned. She had become a force for change. Her family's obsession with her wealth made them blind to the real power she wielded, the power to lift others, to create opportunity, and to make a lasting difference. Nia's secret generosity wasn't just about money. It was about rewriting the rules of success, turning personal triumph into community transformation, and showing that true strength lies in lifting others up, even when the world, and especially her family, fails to notice. The tech summit in Accra was buzzing with excitement, filled with entrepreneurs, investors, and innovators from across Africa. Nia walked onto the stage, confident and composed, carrying herself with the quiet authority that came from years of hard work and perseverance. Among the crowd, her parents and Chike had managed to get front-row seats. They expected applause, praise, and perhaps a chance to claim some connection to her success. What they got was something entirely different. Nia began her keynote not by talking about Oromtech or her own achievements, but about the countless entrepreneurs she had quietly supported over the years. She shared stories of women who had built thriving businesses with her guidance, of young programmers whose lives had been changed by her mentorship, and of communities that had benefited from her strategic investment. Each story was vivid and inspiring, showing how overlooked talent could flourish with the right support. The audience listened in awe, captivated by the impact of her work. In the front row, her parents' expressions shifted from smug anticipation to disbelief. They whispered to each other, confusion turning quickly into frustration. Chike's face tightened as he realized this wasn't about celebrating family or legacy. It was about the lives Nia had changed, lives they had ignored entirely. With every example Nia shared, their discomfort grew. They hadn't just missed the chance to help her succeed. They had completely missed the world she had been quietly building. Nia's words were deliberate but calm. She didn't attack or name anyone directly. Instead, she allowed the evidence of her generosity and vision to speak for itself. She highlighted how her funding had reached places and people her family would never have considered, demonstrating that true influence comes from action, not entitlement. Her parents' embarrassment was palpable, their anger barely contained. For the first time, they understood that Nia's life was entirely her own creation, and that they had no claim over it. The contrast was stark. Nia had taken years of rejection, neglect, and emotional pain and turned it into a force for good. She had not only rebuilt her life, but had elevated hundreds of others in the process. Her family, who had once dismissed her as useless, was confronted with the reality of what she had achieved without their support. The irony was almost poetic. While they obsessed over her wealth and influence, she had been using it to empower those who needed it most, far from their eyes. As the summit ended, applause thundered through the hall. Nia stepped down from the stage, her expression calm, her heart steady. Her family left in a mix of confusion, anger, and begrudging respect. They had hoped to celebrate her success as their own, but instead they had witnessed something far greater, a legacy built on resilience, vision, and quiet, powerful generosity. For Nia, the moment wasn't about revenge, it was about revelation. She had shown the world and her family that she had become unstoppable, not through them, but in spite of them. After the tech summit, Nia requested a private meeting with her parents. She didn't call it to reconcile or invite them back into her life. She called it to assert her independence and set the record straight. They arrived expecting some kind of emotional appeal, maybe even an apology for being excluded. but Nia had something very different in mind. She wanted them to understand, once and for all, the truth about what they had done and what she had accomplished on her own. Sitting across from them in a quiet room, Nia spoke calmly, her voice steady but firm. She began by recounting her childhood, the ways she had been dismissed, the opportunities her brother had been given while she was ignored, the countless moments when she had been forced to fend for herself. She painted a clear picture of the neglect, favoritism, and emotional abandonment that had shaped her early years. Every detail was delivered without anger, but with a weight that made her parents shift uncomfortably in their seats. Then she moved to the present, showing how she had built Aurum Tech from scratch, grown it into a billion-dollar company, and used her success to empower hundreds of overlooked entrepreneurs across Africa. She reminded them that none of this had required their support or approval. She had done it all on her own. The contrast between her parents' past neglect and her current accomplishments was impossible to ignore. Nia's words were composed, but their impact was undeniable. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, nor was she looking for validation from it. What she demanded, quietly, firmly, was recognition of her worth. She wanted them to see that she was more than the child they had dismissed, more than the mistakes and doubts they had projected onto her. She wanted them to understand that she had taken control of her life, built her empire, and created a legacy that extended far beyond their influence. Her parents listened, a mix of guilt, anger, and disbelief on their faces. For the first time, they were confronted with the full scope of the consequences of their neglect. Nia didn't attack or humiliate them. She simply stated the truth, allowing the reality of her independence to speak for itself. There was no shouting, no dramatic confrontation, only clarity, strength, and the quiet power of someone who knows her own. When the conversation ended, Nia felt a deep sense of closure. She had finally faced the people who had shaped her pain and told them, without compromise, what they had lost the chance to influence. It was not reconciliation, but it was justice, emotional justice. She didn't need their approval, their praise, or their love to feel complete. What mattered was that she had claimed her story, her success, and her self-worth. For the first time, the weight of her teenage suffering felt lifted, replaced by pride, confidence, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had become everything they said she never could. Nia stood on the balcony of her office building, looking out over the skyline of Accra. The city stretched beneath her, alive with movement and possibility, and she couldn't help but think back on how far she had come. From a girl who had been ignored and dismissed in Lagos, she had grown into a billionaire CEO who had built her empire from scratch. Every struggle, every lonely night, and every rejection had led her to this moment, and she felt a quiet pride in what she had achieved. But Nia's success wasn't just for herself. She had made it her mission to give back, quietly funding education programs, tech incubators, and women-led startups across West Africa. She invested in people with big ideas but little opportunity, helping them build businesses, gain skills, and create a future they could be proud of. Her impact rippled across communities, transforming lives in ways her family could never have imagined. The girl who had once been overlooked was now a powerful force for change, using her wealth and influence to lift others rather than feed entitlement. Her story spread quickly, shared on social media, highlighted in news outlets, and celebrated by young entrepreneurs across the continent. People were inspired not just by her wealth, but by her resilience, independence, and the way she had rewritten her destiny on her own terms. Nia knew the legacy she was leaving was bigger than family drama, bigger than money, and bigger than any single company. She was building something lasting, a world where talent, ambition, and determination mattered more than circumstance, and where the next generation of innovators could thrive because she had refused to let her past define her. As she watched the sunset over Accra, Nia smiled, knowing her journey was far from over, but that the life she had created, and the lives she had touched, were proof that even the hardest beginnings could lead to extraordinary endings.